Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin, and we're joined by Jeff Berkowitz from Chicago. We're going to be talking about some of the major stories going on today. And Jeff, while you and I normally talk a lot about what's going on inside Illinois, this week, nationally and internationally, the biggest story is Afghanistan.
Terry, is it a national humiliation or is it even worse? I think that's the focus of what we're talking about here. How bad was the Afghanistan exit? Is the United States humiliated? Do we have no allies? Have Russia and China and Iran and North Korea looked at us and said, "Oh boy, we can roll over this country now"? Is that what's going on? And could it get even worse?
Well, what is happening is something that is roiling the political scene both here at home and around the world. Joe Biden says everything was going smoothly. Let's listen to what he has to say earlier this week.
In April, I made a decision to end this war. As part of that decision, we set the date of August 31st for American troops to withdraw. The assumption was that more than 300,000 Afghan national security forces that we had trained over the past 2 decades and equipped would be a strong adversary in their civil wars with the Taliban. That assumption that the Afghan government would be able to hold on for a period of time beyond military drawdown turned out not to be accurate. But I still instructed our national security team to prepare for every eventuality, even that one.
Terry, it was all so unnecessary. Biden saying, look, I thought the 300,000 troops, Afghanis, would be enough. I was shocked. It's all BS. We've seen a phone call now that they're not, the White House is not denying, where he's talking to Ghani, the president. He's saying, look, Cal, you got to say and keep things going, even if it's not quite true. You got to have that presence that makes everybody think it's okay. So Biden knew this was a fragile situation. He knew that in July, perhaps sooner. What did he do? Look, we had 2,500 troops. It was a stable situation there. 0 combat deaths in the last 18 months. Leave the 2,500 troops there. He said, oh, Trump made a deal. Yeah, Trump made a deal that the Afghanis had to make it, that the Taliban had to have an agreement with the Afghan government, or if they didn't, the deal was off. So he had every reason to break it. He broke every other agreement or policy that Trump had. Why couldn't he do this? So no, it doesn't fly to blame it on Trump. Look, we have troops in South Korea. We have troops around the world. So why couldn't he just leave well enough alone? Leave contractors involved, small numbers, that would give them the air power that they need. That is the Afghan government and the Afghan military. All could have been fine.
Let's point out, I mean, Biden is acting like, you know, we didn't, I mean, as we just heard, we didn't know that the Afghan army was going to collapse. Well, if you didn't know, how is it that you didn't know? Because let me point out here, Jeff, that we have right here NBC News on June the 6th of this year, and it says, without U.S. contractors, the Afghan military will lose its main advantage over the Taliban: air power. And, you know, this was well known. This is what was going to keep the Taliban at bay, that we had the air power, and that was what the Taliban army did not have. And Biden can say that he was caught, you know, unawares, but he shouldn't have been. And not only we left something like $82 billion worth of equipment there. So much so that a video I was looking at just yesterday was noting that the Russians are horrified at this military equipment that is now in Afghanistan, that the Taliban, now thanks to American taxpayers and the incompetence of planning, have now a better equipped army in the field than many of the Russian troops.
It's all a big lie. We've heard of Trump and the big lie that his critics say he wants to contend he really didn't lose the 2020 election. Put that aside. This is a bigger lie. It's unfathomable that the press or anybody could push this argument that Biden didn't know how fragile this government was and how small an incremental future investment by the U.S. was necessary to maintain this. You don't have to keep going back to endless wars. We've lost 0 combat deaths in the last 18 months. 2,500 troops, modest number of contractors to keep the air power going, the U.S. assistance to keep that air power being flown by Afghanis. They had lost something like 70,000 lives in the last 8 or 9 years. They've been fighting the war. Okay, so it's all
they were the ground
lie.
troop. We were providing air power and intelligence services, and we had Americans there as contractors, as noted in the NBC article. So this idea, and here it's a disaster. It's a disaster that's blowing up in their faces. Let's listen to one other bite from the president's speech the other day, in which he gets to the point that he says they had provided for every contingency.
More than 5,500 Americans were airlifted out. And for those who remain, we will make arrangements to get them out if they so choose. As for the Afghans, we and our partners have airlifted 100,000 of them. No country in history has done more to airlift out the residents of another country than we have done.
Look, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, really, but what's coming out in the news now at Fox, at Tucker Carlson, and others, is that what the administration keeps talking about is the big success here, folks, is that we evacuated 120,000 or so people, not Americans, 120,000 or so people coming out of Afghanistan via Europe or in other areas into the United States, okay, via Qatar and so forth. And let's look at those 120,000 evacuees. There's not Americans, about 5,500 Americans. First, Biden said all 100% Americans will be out. We're not leaving until then. And then he says, well, we got 90%. He's our 90% president. He gets 90% Americans out, leaves 10% there. You like that? The first time America has said we finished a war and we left 10% behind. But the main thing, Terry, is who are these other people who are now starting to come into the United States of these 100,000 or so evacuees? Only about fewer than 10,000 are what they call SIVs, special immigration visas, okay? Those are people who are clearly vetted. We have a process set up. The other 90,000, are they vetted? The rumor is no. They're coming into the United States unvetted. They're being landed in a bunch of areas around the country, military bases,
including Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, which is just
right
north of the Illinois border. And guess where they're going to be going, Jeff? They're going to be coming, some of them are going to be coming here to Illinois. These people, despite what the White House says, these people have not been vetted. And let me bring up, just for our viewers to see, that a Rasmussen poll that was published yesterday, as we taped this on September 2, this came out September 1, 52% of voters think Biden should resign over the Afghan withdrawal. And it says further down, which we don't have on the screen, 32% of Democrat voters think Biden should withdraw. But it also says the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan was so badly handled that President Biden should resign because of it, according to a majority of voters. However, and this is a big however, most people do not think Vice President Harris is qualified to replace Biden if he leaves office. So apparently the best thing that Joe Biden did was to pick as a running mate someone who is not qualified to be president, and so he will not be forced from office because we go from the frying pan to the fire, according to the voters.
Well, look, it's amazing because everybody in the Biden administration keeps talking about what a success it has been. The evacuees, we've never had an airlift like this, better than the Berlin airlift. But folks, what you should look for in the next month or so, let's look for the deconstruction of who these 110,000 evacuees who are not SIVs, who are not vetted. And if they were vetted, have them explain how. Because we hear the government is out there looking for translators, translators to go to these 10,000 or 2,000 who are in
Well, we left
Wisconsin
those behind in
areas.
Afghanistan, didn't we?
Well, that's the point. They're not. So these are not the people who helped
And
us.
look, Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, said yesterday in the press briefing that we are fully vetting these people. Who believes that? How could you be? You're leaving in an emergency out of Kabul, and we're to believe that you're vetting these people? Give me a break. Based on
Well-
what? You think the Taliban are going to give us their records so we can find out what their resumes are and if they were Taliban fighters in the past? I mean,
The theory was they would be vetted in Qatar and other places and then come to the
I
United
don't know that
States.
that's
Not all
a
of
theory.
them.
It might be a big
That's
lie.
the theory.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
So
a cover story.
folks, don't take my word for it. Don't take Fox's word for it. Don't take Jen Psaki, press secretary to Biden, word for it. No, you look for the details. You look for how this vetting occurred. And if it didn't occur, well, then you got to start worrying, are these 100,000 people being brought in to help with the voting for Democrats in the midterm? Sounds crazy, but look what's happening with our elections. Look what the mail-in voting is doing. Look at the southern border.
Well,
Bringing
that's
in people.
what I was going to say. Look, this is like the second depth charge where we have an administration that is just about to enter its ninth month. We have a border that had been contained along our southern border, and now it's 200,000 estimated illegals are coming in. Is anyone vetting those? No, they are not.
200,000, Terry, the annual
month.
rate is 2 million. So yes, 200,000 per month is 2 million per year. And where are those people going?
So
They're being
that's a
pushed into the
disaster.
hinterland.
Now
Right.
at nine, now we have the Afghan disaster, and this administration, in the broader context, as we say, rather than what do the American people have on their mind without going into the weeds? What they have on their mind that this is a gang that can't shoot straight when it comes to the Biden administration, that they can't manage. What they are perhaps good at is trying to spin. And even the spin, this disaster is so big, so public, they cannot spin their way out of it. And as we move into some other issue, Jeff, let me just say why this matters so much is for all the reasons we've already discussed, but also it matters because the political implications of this disaster could well last in the short run. Maybe it's going to impact the governor's race in California. Maybe it'll almost certainly impact the primary elections here in Illinois, what's on the voters' mind, and then the November elections in 2022 that are now only about 14 months away.
Well, but for the future, folks, we've just raised this. We haven't answered. You should ask facts from us, from others, but look at the coming months, because the Biden administration, as you say, it's a disaster, but they think it's a success. Maybe they're right, because maybe they're looking at these voters that's coming in, the 100,000 that they're putting in around the states that are battleground states for the midterms in 2022, the presidential 2024. Maybe the Biden administration thinks they can convert them to voters. Maybe they think many, not all, but many of the 2 million, that's the annual pace coming in on the southern border. Maybe they know what they're doing, Terry, not about running the country, not about making it safe, not about making it much worse than the Vietnam in 75. Because here, folks, the last thing we haven't mentioned is that now Afghanistan is a magnet for ISIS-K, magnet for Al-Qaeda, magnet for more Taliban. Afghanistan is now being groomed to be what they were on September 11, another training ground for terrorists. So now we have a much more dangerous situation than we had on September 11, 2001. That's the thing to
guess
keep
what,
in mind.
folks? We're importing these people. Remember when Trump was so criticized for having the Muslim ban from countries where there was terrorism? We just brought in 100,000 Afghans. And look, I am sure that there are many, many good people in there. But as we note the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we should also note that we live in a dangerous world. It is a reminder not just of those who died, but of the threat. They were killed by an international threat that came to our border. And now we have over 100,000 people that despite what the administration says, it would be impossible to have anyone adequately vet these people to know whether or not there are terrorists among these people. Maybe there's only out of 100,000, maybe there's only 500 terrorists. But, you know, Jeff, it was only 19 terrorists that caused 9/11. So we're going to have these people dispersed throughout the country, including here in Illinois. So communities from Downers Grove to Carbondale and elsewhere could well have these people moving into the neighborhood. It is not jingoistic to be saying it should be a concern. Maybe the concerns prove unwarranted, but to say that we, you know, have everything, this administration is on top of everything. This administration has proven time and again they're on top of nothing, that they can't even plan an orderly withdrawal, that they can't get our military equipment out, which we could have easily arranged to do and have arranged to do that months ago.
Well, just remember, SIVs, special immigration visas, those require vetting. And those, Terry Martin, Jeff Berkowitz, many others would rely on. But we're told a small number of the 100,000, maybe 10% or less, are SIVs. So the 90,000 or so, they come in, the exception is called a parole release. That's something that's very exceptional. The president can do it on his say-so, but it shouldn't be allowed to bring in the 90,000. So let's ask Jen Psaki, the press secretary. Let's ask Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. Let's ask the Secretary of Defense. Let's ask the National Security Advisor. These are people who should give us reliable information as to these 100,000. Were they vetted, where, and how?
One last word on this. We need to move along, but the thing is anyone going to be held responsible for this disaster? Is the president going to fire Secretary of Defense, Joint Chiefs of Staff Milley, General Milley? Who's going to be held responsible for this? I bet nobody, because they're going to try to say, despite everything you see, the horrors of people clinging to aircraft, oh no, Jeff, this was a great withdrawal, a heroic effort. They're going to try to say they did this properly. The American people aren't buying it.
Let's see if we can knock off 4 issues in 10 minutes and take our viewers around the state of Illinois. Talking disasters.
Right now we still got about 13 minutes left, so where do you want to go first?
Well, let's go to the Illinois energy situation. Talking disasters. The Democrats are showing they can't reliably pass a reliable grid through the Democrat-controlled legislature. They can't get the Democrats to agree, let it invite the Republicans to be a part of this and get an agreement with them. So what we hear, we're taping this on September 2nd. The Dems invited everybody back, including Republicans, perhaps, surprisingly, to participate in a session earlier this week on Tuesday. They spent a day to midnight and later doing that. The Senate passed what they called something that they thought was okay to deal with the issues Terry and I have been raising about how they were going to have a reliable grid or not. They couldn't get it through the House. They couldn't get agreement with the House. The governor doesn't like it. So their Speaker Walsh, doing his bidding, said he's not going to do anything to pass it through the House. And so the short of it is the legislation didn't pass. In this case, maybe gridlock was good, but you still have the issue of what's our grid going to look like? Let's go right to that, Terry. What is the grid for Illinois? Are we going to have continued 50% or so nuclear, 30% coal, 10% electric, 10% natural gas for electricity? There's the chart. It's 2016, but it's still pretty much that's the way it is.
Yeah, and we can see the magenta is coal. And the Senate voted on the bill. They passed it, the Illinois Senate, to eliminate 2 coal plants. By
2045, maybe.
By 2045.
That's not good. And what the sticking point was, Pritzker says He wants to start stepping it down for coal plants before 2045. You can't get the folks who are controlling that in Springfield, in Metro East Prairie State Energy Campus. So there's not agreement on that, the step down. And so they don't really know what they want, what the Dems want.
And
the
what
Republicans are
this
saying, well, I don't know what they're saying.
well, look,
Okay.
this is a battle royal among Democratic voting blocs, one being the environmentalists and the other being the labor unions. The labor unions are going to be losing jobs if the environmentalists get their way. This is the sticking point. Some of the critics say, just as Joe Biden wanted to posture on Afghanistan to say, look at me, I ended the war, I'm the guy, I'm the peace president, and that turned into a disaster. Some of the critics are saying Governor Pritzker here is looking to political posture by saying, look at me, I'm the clean energy governor, look what I've done, we've gotten rid of coal, we're voting to get rid of natural gas. You know, whether that's fair or not, people are saying that that's...
Why would the governor be doing that?
Well,
why does he want to be known as the greenest governor?
One can only, I mean, it's conjecture. Maybe he wants to run for president himself. I mean,
2024,
if 52% of the people, the voters, now think Biden should resign, and given his age and his fragility of mind, it's almost for sure that Joe Biden is not going to be running for re-election. So very, very possible Governor Pritzker is looking to position himself as a candidate for the Democratic nomination in 2024.
I haven't heard any of the mainstream media asking him that. Terry, wouldn't it be great to have the governor sitting here with you and me and talking about that, and we'd ask him and he'd give us the true
I'm sure he would give us an absolute truth. Yeah.
Well, let's go on to topic 3, because the other big deal they did deal with, that is the state legislature on Tuesday when they were in, that was Tuesday, August 31, is redistricting and the remap, okay? And they got that through and all is good, right? We got a nice remap here. And the bottom line, this remap, it's going to be challenged. We may have a trial on that later this year in federal court. We'll see. They did clean up the deviations. That is, they couldn't get the numbers right before because they weren't using census data. So they didn't have. So they had too wide a disparity between the smallest district and the largest district in terms of population. They handled that. They made some districts a little bit more Hispanic. They made the map a little bit more Hispanic. That might deal with the racial, constitutional issues, Voting Rights Act, and otherwise. That might work. And what did they do? They also kept 6 or so of remember we told you folks that the Democrats had done this nice job, really not done that much before, nice for them, of taking 14 incumbents, Republican incumbents in the House, and put 7 against 7 Republican incumbents against 7 others in their primaries if they wanted to possibly stay in. They now cut that down. They cut it from 7 to 6 districts. So now they have 12 people on the bubble, so to speak. They now think, the Democrats think they can now take that margin, which is 73 House seats to 45 Republicans, and juice it up to 81. That would be the last nail in the coffin, perhaps, of the Illinois GOP. Will the Republicans
the way it's going, the
back
remaining
and stop that?
Republican can be called the caucus leader.
Okay. So really, we're doing well here. You can see what's going. The Democrats are very proud. They got that remap through. The Democrats.
You know what's going to happen here, Jeff.
But
Look, the Democratic Party in Illinois is controlling already so much of the decision making with their lopsided majorities in the House and Senate, as well as the governor's mansion and all the statewide office holders. That, you know, whatever happens, they're going to own it. I mean, there's that other side. They can't be saying that it was Me Too with the Republicans and that the Republicans shared the blame for whether it's the pensions going down or something else. They own what's going on.
Governor Pritzker, if you're the governor, the saying is you own it. So if you're the governor and you got a faulty map and it's going to be challenged and all that, Governor Pritzker, you own it. Maybe the Democrats, your buddies, passed it, but you own it. You're going to sign it. The energy grid, if it's unreliable, you own it. let's go on. Let's give the Republicans some good news. Let's talk about the GOP primary for governor. What's going on there, Terry, as our viewers know, because we've had 3 of the 4 who are running on public affairs, so they've gotten an introduction. Our regular viewers have seen Ditch Digger CEO Gary Rabine. They've seen Senator Darren Bailey. They've seen ex-Senator, former Senator Paul Schimpf. They haven't seen Max Solomon, but those are the 4 publicly announced candidates in the race now. Big news, big news. As we're taping this on September 2nd, it's now been publicly reported, not publicly confirmed by Jesse Sullivan, but publicly reported that Jesse Sullivan will be entering the race publicly next week.
Tell us who Jesse Sullivan is, because most of us have never heard of him before, and we've got about 4 minutes.
You'll be hearing plenty, because he may be the new JFK, new frontier. Why? He's 37. The other folks are all 50, 55. He is a millennial, Terry. He still qualifies. He's smart, he's thoughtful.
And he doesn't have any baggage because he's never held office before, and so he's kind of a blank slate.
Yeah, so, and in some ways that's good, some ways that's not. We'll find out.
And you say it's confirmed he's going to be announcing as a Republican candidate for governor.
He has not confirmed it. I'm reporting what's publicly reported by other media. I won't say what I know other than I think it's a good prediction, but he's not confirmed it yet. Maybe he will by the time this airs, say in the next few days. And I think we'll certainly hear from Jesse Sullivan on the week of, on Labor Day week, which is the week of September 6th. And he's a Stanford MBA. He comes from downstate, from Petersburg, Illinois, just outside
of Springfield, about 20 minutes.
Right. He's got a great family. He's got 4 young kids, a nice wife. He's smart. He's thoughtful. He's got a lot of verbal dexterity. He may be able to, he may know this stuff. We'll find out. We're going to have him on the show, I think. So we'll find out. And more news, and more, and more. It's like selling Vegematics, and more. Okay, what else are you going to find, Jeff? Well, we've got, I think, I'm predicting another strong candidate with strong support coming out in October. So in the next 2 months.
And what part of the state would that person be from?
Well, I'm predicting upstate. So we got one more upstate, one downstate, and more, folks, because Congressman Rodney Davis is thinking about it. If the Democrats screw him over too much in his current district, the 13th, on redistricting, well, he may just jump in the governor's race. And more, folks, and more.
Well, possibly Kirk Dillard, I was going to say, former Senator Kirk Dillard, who who came within 200 votes of getting the Republican nomination to run against Pat Quinn a few years back. He is also being asked to run. He was Jim Edgar's chief of staff.
Sure.
So he knows how the government works. But
enough with Dillard. We only have a minute or 2 left. We got to go to this chart. It's a dynamite chart, maybe 2. Let's bring it up if we can, Terry. This is the decline of Illinois. Everybody's looking at the shiny objects. They're not looking at the decline. Error points are. Here's the state. It's hard. The title's tough. State of Illinois, total primary government net position. Look, wire points, the government uses that kind of thing. But what does that show you? Look at the x-axis, as we used to say in the olden days. That is that line on the bottom that goes from 2002 to 2020. Those are the years. The last 19 years, look at the line on top going sharply down. The negatives, it's going down.
Explain clearly what that red line is, and we got 1 minute.
In 2002, our net worth in Illinois was a negative $6 billion. Not good that it's negative, but only 6. What's happened in the last 2 decades? It's gone down to $194 billion negative net worth. Remember, we've talked about the shortfall in pensions. We might have that chart. If not, it's about $420
There's not enough
billion.
time to look at that now.
The point is, folks, the pensions are a mess. Okay, we'll bring you stuff from Joliet.
Well, and the point is the 194 billion, which is the official government number, that's a negative $194 billion net worth, is really not accurate. It's maybe twice that.
Right. Moody's would say it's more like 317 billion.
We're going to have to close out.
It's a big number.
We'll come back to this in the future, folks. Thanks for watching us. We'll say goodbye for now.